Hello and welcome back for another awesome episode of the Fit 40 podcast. Today we're going to be talking about the beginner's guide to strength training. I'm going to give you the full playbook. If you're interested in learning exactly how to strength train, how you should set up your workouts, how many days you should do, and everything in between, we're going to cover it today. So let's start it off with understanding that when it comes to exercise, if your goal is weight loss, solely doing exercise and focusing on nothing else is a terrible strategy. It does not work. But that being said, when it comes to trying to lose body fat, trying to lose weight, including exercise can make the journey a whole lot easier and a whole lot more enjoyable because you can actually eat more food and you feel more energized. So it helps you stick to the plan a whole lot better. But alone from that, like if let's just say that's not on your radar, let's just say we're not quite there yet and we just want to get active, we want to move, just know that even if your diet isn't exactly ideal, you can still improve your metabolic health, your cardiovascular health. You can build lean muscle mass to make life feel easier, just daily activities feel easier. You're going to have more endurance to allow you to be more active, like especially if you have young kids. If you can do that, you're going to be able to run around with them a lot more and not be the dad or the mom sitting and just watching them do it, but actually actively participating. And then you're also going to help put yourself in a position to live longer and increase your health span. So if you've heard the Dr. Peter Attia talk about it, he's popularized this term. There's your lifespan and your health span. There's a lot of people right now that are living longer, but it's not a high quality life. It's just they're surviving. They're like sitting all the time. They're doing just basic stuff, not really thriving. And then there's health span, the people that really take time to improve their health and improve their nutrition, their workouts and all this stuff. And they're thriving later in life, at least usually. Not going to account for people that unfortunately get sick or they have something happen to them. But the people that are putting themselves in the best position are those people that are able to enjoy that area of life later in life where they can just do all the things that they want to do without feeling restricted and feeling like, oh, I can't. Now, let's talk about how to get into strength training. So the first thing I want to say is just get in the door. Okay. We used to have a sticker where I used to work at the gym, and it said right where the handle was, it said, you just did the hardest part. Okay, just showing up for people who are beginners is the toughest thing to do. But if you are able to do it over and over and over again and build that muscle in your brain of, I show up for myself, I make time for this, I make this a priority, it's going to carry over a ton and it's going to make everything so much easier because you're like, okay, I'm here. Now it's just a matter of what to do. All right. So when it comes to like getting in the door, what are the main focuses that we want to think about? Number one is treat it like gym class. It's like we're trying new stuff. We're just there to explore and see what it's all about. So get familiar with the equipment, test it out, see how you adjust it, or better yet, ask a staff member for some help on exactly how to adjust the machines so that it works for you and it fits your body. Don't just force yourself into a machine because that usually doesn't go too well. Understand how to modify things. And when it comes to loading the plates and things like that, and also just understanding the basic gym etiquette. How do people here operate? Because a lot of times gyms, unfortunately, don't go over the whole gym etiquette aspect. So there's a lot of people standing right smack in front of the dumbbells. There's people that are setting up their mats in walking areas, and it just becomes this annoying thing that you don't want to have to deal with. So learning the lay of the land is a very big one too. Another thing that helps a lot to understand is feeling the burn. So let's say you do get onto a machine and it feels good. You don't feel any like bad joint pain and you're like, okay, this feels pretty smooth. Take one set, like the very end, and just go as long as you possibly can without really having a repetition target in mind, and just feel what that burn in the muscle feels like, just to get familiar with it. Because that can be really, I guess, shocking for some people in the beginning. I've worked with straight beginners over the years. in person and online. And let me tell you, that initial burn is honestly such foreign territory for some people. So if you haven't really experienced what that feels like, it can help just to get a touch of it. Just feel like, oh, this is what everybody talks about, where you feel that burning sensation, which is the hydrogen ions in your body doing their thing, but also understanding what the pump feels like. So that's when your muscles fill up with blood and you feel like it's almost like somebody like pumped a balloon into your bicep. You're doing bicep curls. Somebody just went just, I hope that didn't sound too terrible on the mic, but they're just blowing into your muscle and it's like now a little bit bigger, which is great. That's what we want. We want those muscles to fill up with blood, to do their thing, to get active. So that can help a ton. And also focus on leaving feeling better. It's not about going to the gym and saying, I'm going to make up for years and years of not doing this or months and months of not doing this. It's not about punishing yourself for being sedentary. Okay. It's about you taking this next step to feel better, to live a higher quality life that you know you want and now you're ready to work for. So now that we've covered that, how many days a week? How often should you strength train? When it comes to strength training, 1 time a week is minimum because that will be plenty for most people to maintain where they're at once you've gotten into the groove. So like, let's say you have an off week, just know if you can only make it to the gym 1 time, or you can only do a home training session 1 time, you're still doing enough to give your muscles that kick that's like, hey, you still got to work a little bit and you'll be able to maintain your results. Now let's put it into, okay, what do I do to get results? What do I do to push my body to build that lean muscle, to feel better? Okay? 2 to 4 times is ideal. And you could break it up in a number of different ways, which we're going to get into. But when it comes to the basic strength training, like you're getting in there lifting weights or using some sort of resistance, whether that's bands or TRX, like strength training is an umbrella term for resistance training. So anything that makes it harder, that could be body weight, that could be, like I said, TRX, bands, cables, anything that gives you a little bit of resistance that isn't like you're just swatting at air. That's strength training. So 2 to 4 times ideally. And then on the off days, doing some cardio, mobility, Pilates, yoga, stuff like that feels really good and complements it very, very well. And if you want to understand the whole fatigue ratio on that, like understanding high versus low fatigue, check out Wednesday's podcast or the most previous one, if you're catching this later, on stress and exercise. That'll help explain it a whole lot. Now, when it comes to the terms that I'm about to use, I want you to understand what I'm saying because there's nothing more annoying. I've sat through a lot of presentations where the terms were over my head and I'm just like, okay, what does that mean again? And it takes away from the whole learning of it. So let's go through that real quick so you can really just absorb everything as I'm saying it. So when I say sets, that's basically rounds. So sets and rounds are interchangeable. It's just whenever you've finished your repetitions or finished whatever time you had for that exercise, that's the completion of a set or a round. And then when it comes to repetitions, it's a single action. So when you're squatting, going down and going up 1 time, that's 1 repetition. And then when it comes to circuits or supersets, those are multiple exercises in a row with no rest, or the rest is at the very, very end of those exercises. So let's say you're doing push-ups and squats and then bicep curls. Okay. You do your push-ups, you take no time, you go right into the squats, you do your squats, you take no time, you go right into the bicep curls. And then once you're done with that, then you rest. That would be a circuit or that would be a superset. And sometimes people get technical with this. Like technically a superset is only 2 exercises and a giant set is 3 or more, but we're not going to go into that. Just when I say superset, it just means more than 1 exercise compared to what a straight set is, which is a straight set is you do 1 exercise, rest. And then you do that back and forth. So you stay on that 1 exercise. Like let's say you're using a machine like a tricep push down, like with that rope that kind of goes in a upside down U shape and you press the rope down and down. Okay. You do that for 10 repetitions and then you just hang out, look at your phone, set the timer. And then you're like, all right, time for my next set. And then you do it again. Then you just chill, set the timer, and you're like, all right. And you just stay on that one. That's a straight set. So now we understand where we're coming at as far as these terms go. Now, when it comes to what type of exercises you should do, like how should you break it up body part wise, because a lot of people get into the bodybuilder circles when it comes to this stuff where it's like, okay, we're doing body part splits, where it's like we're going to do chest on Monday, back on Tuesday, legs on Wednesday, and do that. Unfortunately, especially beginners who are struggling just to get there enough days end up leaving a lot on the table when they do splits like that, because if you miss a day, you miss an entire muscle group. And that's why I really lean towards full body stuff. So I like to hit all muscle groups in the beginning. So something like a push, pull, legs, and core is a really good one. Or if you want to do really check off all the boxes, doing something pushing, pulling, squatting, hinging, core, and mobility. And then full body is the way I go about that, because if you do miss a day, if life happens, at least you hit everything at least once. And it makes it easier to get enough volume so that you can see the growth that you want to see. So you can see the adaptations that you want to see. Because if you're doing it all in one go, you're also going to be driving really high fatigue. So you're going to get better recovery as well. Now, when it comes to how many repetitions, or actually, let me back that up a sec, because as I was saying it, I'm like, I know I've had a lot of questions on these things. So when I say something is pulling, that is something like a row, like where you're pulling back and forth and you're taking that handle or that dumbbell and pulling it closer to your body, or a pull down machine where you're holding that bar that's up, the lat pull down, and you're pulling it down to your chest. Okay, that would be a pull. I would even classify a bicep curl as a pull. And then when it comes to pushing, that stuff like push-ups, chest presses, anything that's like a press would be a push. And then when it comes to legs, like you heard me say, squat and hinge, those are the two that I really lean on. Now, there's also calves as well, and we could classify that as legs. But when it comes to the ones that get you the most muscle groups involved, squatting and hinging. So squatting, obviously squats, but also pretty much anything that involves your knee pushing forward over your toes. That would be what's considered a squat, or something that gets you so your knee is over the tip of your toe, not like pushing past it, depending on how much your knee can handle. Now, what a hinge is when instead of your knees going forward to allow you to go down, your knees stay put and your butt goes back. So it's what we call a neutral shin angle, where your knee is over your ankle and it looks like a straight line. It's not like where you squat and it's like a V, if that makes sense. So that's things like RDLs, deadlifts, bridges, things like that. And then there's core. Obviously, we know core. That's the one thing everybody seems to know. Crunches, planks, things like that. And I would also put carries in there as well, because that's like the most underrated version of a core exercise out there. If you are a human being, you should probably do some version of carries. Speaking of which, I got to work those back into my training. Some things get lost. Sometimes it happens, but it is what it is. And then last thing I would include is mobility of some sort. I love doing them for rest periods for my own clients and in my own programs, but doing it in the warm up, doing it as a cool down, mobility is a really, really good one to do. Just as we age, it is more and more important. I'm sure anybody listening right now that gets really stiff throughout the day can attest. When you do some stretching, when you move your body a little bit in directions it hasn't been in a while, it feels pretty good. It's kind of like releasing the e-brake. All right, now we've got all that covered. Let's talk about repetitions. So when it comes to repetitions, we want to make sure that in the beginning, we're going a little bit higher. So you're going to see on the internet, there's people that preach about lower repetitions and they'll fight tooth and nail all about that. And honestly, I am totally cool with that for intermediate and advanced. But when you're a beginner, you need practice, because if you're not efficient at these exercises, you're not going to get the most out of those low repetitions. So you need a lot of reps, so that way you can mess up on a couple of the beginning ones. That way at the very end, you can let your form deviate a little bit and actually be able to catch it and be like, okay, I'm not doing this in the best way possible, so I'm going to touch it up. And I have a lot of opportunities to do that. So doing something around 10 to 15 repetitions is ideal. I wouldn't really go past 15, like in the 20, 30s, because as you go up and up and up in repetitions, it does beat up your body a little bit and it can lead to overuse issues. So 10 to 15 is usually a solid rep range for practicing enough and getting those repetitions to put, like, I keep avoiding saying put in the reps, but that's basically what we're doing. And then also, along with that, when you practice this, you can see how balanced am I. So if you're squatting and you're always leaning forward on your toes, or you're always falling back on your heels, you can do it over and over again to feel like, okay, where's that balance point? Where do I feel the best? Or if you're pushing the dumbbell up and down and it's almost falling behind you, or it's falling forward and it just doesn't feel like it's smooth, then you get the opportunity to find that smooth path of resistance. And it helps having a trainer. If you really want the best bang for your buck, just have a trainer for like 3 to 6 months and they can teach you all this stuff and you'll understand what I'm talking about. And then also, when it comes to form, making sure that certain things don't hurt. So sometimes when it comes to certain exercises, they all have expiration dates on our bodies. Certain things just do not feel good depending on our individual anatomy, our injury history, and things like that. So you might find that one thing that you do hurts a little bit or it feels uncomfortable. And you're like, well, I don't want to give up on this just yet. Let me see if I can mess with it a little bit. So sometimes doing that 10 to 15 repetitions allows you to try different angles, to sit a little bit differently into a position or adjust your body. And then all of a sudden doesn't hurt. So working on form and understanding what feels best, that can help a lot too. And last but not least, by doing all of this, like I just said before, you will get more efficient over time. So if you do want to bring those repetitions down, because if you're like me or like many of my clients, it's like, do I really have to do 10 repetitions? No, you could go as low as like, you could honestly do single reps, but that's not exactly ideal. Like the lowest I would go if you're trying to build lean muscle is around 4 repetitions. So if you want to stick in that 4 to 8 repetition range, awesome. But you need that beginning section of your journey to be higher repetition, so you get all that practice, so that way when you're doing say 4 repetitions, they're high quality, you're getting the most bang for your buck, you're milking those 4 exercises or those 4 repetitions for all that they're worth, and you're going to get the best results possible, rather than doing 4 reps that are unbalanced, that feel off, that could potentially put you into injury if you're putting yourself in a position that causes pain. So do the high reps now with the intent of dropping them as you get later into your journey. And then when it comes to sets or rounds, like we just covered, how many should you do in a certain session? When it comes to a session, it should be anywhere from 1 to 5. Now, I like the sweet spot of 3 because just personal experience, that's usually the one people adapt to the best. It doesn't put you into this place where we have too many sets where we're beating up our body to the point where it's not adapting well. And it's not like we're doing next to nothing where we're not getting enough stimulus. Now, the reason I put 1 in there and even 2 in there is because in the beginning, especially if you haven't done anything to this point whatsoever, if you show up to the gym and you do 1 set and you push yourself to that point where it burns a little bit and it feels like it's hard and it feels like you did something, you're going to get benefit from that. Your body will adapt from just 1 set. But that won't last forever, which is why we do want to get to like 3 or 4 sets. So just know first week, 2 weeks, maybe in the first month, 1 to 2 sets could give you a whole lot of bang for your buck. Now, when it comes to the sets, just know, depending on your time and honestly your recovery rate, the more exercises that you do in your workout, the less sets that you should be doing them for. Because overall, you want your session to be about 20 sets or less. So what does that look like? That's basically 4 to 6 moves for 3 to 4 sets. Now, there's some programs out there that will give you 10, 15 exercises, and it's honestly, I'll just say this, as somebody who has gone through multiple certs, as somebody who has taken their education to the point where they understand this stuff, somebody who writes programs that knows what they're talking about, when you see somebody put down on a program that they're doing 10, 15, 20 exercises, not sets, exercises, you're like, this person has no idea what they're doing. Because anybody worth their salt who writes programs, who is a trainer, knows that 4 to 6 exercises is that sweet spot. Because the more exercises you add on, the less intention you can give. And it's hard to learn 10 to 15 things compared to 4 to 6 things. Like we just said, in the beginning, right now, it's learning time. You got to understand exactly how these movements should feel. So only do 4 to 6 of them and you will get incredible results because it's more about the intent rather than touching on every little thing. If you can do a squat with pristine technique to the best of your ability, you're going to get more out of doing 4 sets of that than doing a really shitty version of a squat, then doing a lunge, and then doing some sort of a calf raise, and then doing some sort of a deadlift, and then also doing this and also doing that, all half-assed or worse. Okay, so really dial it in and focus on the intent and the intensity that you can put into the single exercise, and only do 4 to 6 of those. And that's also not including mobility or stretching or anything like that, or any other low intensity stuff like that. I'm talking about the big moves like squats, deadlifts, push-ups, pulling stuff, things like that, all the ones I mentioned before. Now, when it comes to types of sets, there's a few different types that we can do. Like we talked about before, there's straight sets. So where you do the exercise, you rest, do that same exercise, rest, and do that for however many. There's also the circuit and superset, which are a little bit more time friendly. So like when it comes to straight sets, that will require more time because you're adding in more rest periods. So like if you were to do, say, squats and push-ups, if you did squats, rest 2 minutes, squats, rest 2 minutes, squat, rest 2 minutes, and then you did push-ups, rest 2, push-ups, rest 2, push-ups, rest 2. Okay, that would be a lot more time than doing push-ups, squats, rest, push-ups, squats, rest. It's literally double the rest period. So if you're tight on time, do something that's a circuit or a superset, and ideally with stuff that's non-competing. So when I say non-competing, things like a squat is not really going to mess up your push-up. But if you do a squat with, say, I don't know, let's throw a leg extension in there. So that's two things that are both working your quads. You're going to get tired on both of them in that specific area, and they're going to take away from each other. So what you want to do is get the most bang for your buck by only doing one exercise per muscle group in that superset, or do it in a complementary way. Like there's advanced techniques that you can do, but for right now where you're at, you ideally would want to do, say, upper lower or anterior posterior. So what anterior is the front of your body, posterior is the back. So what that would be like is something that Arnold Schwarzenegger made this really popular, where he would do, say, a bench press, because that would be the anterior, the front of your body. And then he'd do something like a row where you're pulling. So that's the back of your body. And then they complement each other really well, because if you want to get into like the nitty gritty of it, I won't get nerdy, but the whole idea of stretching the opposite muscle group, because when you're pushing and you are squeezing all those muscles in front, the muscles in back are stretching. And by doing that stretching, it actually helps get a little bit more bang for your buck, and it helps you recover a little bit more set to set, because it's almost like active recovery while you're doing it. So it can produce a lot of muscle in that way, which is awesome. Now, next, when it comes to other types of sets, a lot of these you'll hear in the powerlifting communities or CrossFit communities. When it comes to CrossFit in particular, AMRAPs, it's AMRAP, as many reps as possible, or as many reps or as many rounds as possible. That's where it gets a little tricky, but usually it means as many rounds as possible. So what that means is you'll have, say, 3 to 5 exercises in a row, like a circuit, like a superset, and the goal is you set a timer for however long, say 10, 15, 20 minutes, and you do as many rounds as you can. Now, the goal is that you are able to do more rounds because you need less rest, and you keep the weights the same. But this is just something that gets thrown in where it's like more conditioning focused, and it also can lead to strength gain as well and muscle gain as well. It's just not like what we would consider best practice because of the lack of a rest period. But that being said, it still can produce really, really good results. So just know, if you're doing a group class and you're doing an AMRAP, it's not like you're doing anything bad. It's just one way to train. Next is EMOM, every minute on the minute. So for this type of set, you have an exercise, usually just one, maybe two, where you have a certain amount of time or a certain amount of repetitions to do the exercise. And then whatever is left of that minute is your rest. So you really get rewarded for moving fast and getting it done. So for example, let's say you were doing kettlebell swings, because that honestly is usually in a ton of EMOMs. It says to do 10 swings every minute on the minute. So you do 10 and then you rest. So you get it done in, say, 15 seconds. Now you have 45 seconds to chill out and relax. Now, next time you do it, you do your 10 repetitions, you put it down and you're like, damn, that took a little bit longer. That took 20 seconds. Well, now you only got 40 seconds to rest. And that's how every minute on the minute works. And then last but not least is cluster. This is one of my favorites, especially for as you're getting out of that beginner stage and into the intermediate stage where you're trying to do exercises that are heavier and you're using heavier weights. Sometimes certain things like grip will become an issue, and going for high repetitions can be really, really hard. So you either do one, you invest in some equipment like straps to help with that, or you can implement something like cluster sets where, let's say you're doing deadlifts, for example, and you have a set of 10. Instead of doing 10 straight where it's like just bang, 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 and you go for 10, instead of that, what a cluster set is you break that up. So you could do 5, put it down, shake it off, rest for like 10, 20 seconds, and then get another 5. Or you could even break it up even further than that. You could do 4, shake it off for 10 seconds, do 4, shake it off, and then do 2. Those are what would be considered cluster sets, because as far as total volume and tonnage, nothing is really different. You are getting the same amount of work, but you're not going to be getting that same amount of exertion when it comes to muscle endurance and your cardio. So you're not going to be like going straight through. Now, again, it's not a bad thing. It's just a different way. So what in all this being said, what should you do? Like, okay, for anybody that's like, okay, I learned everything, you told me all this stuff, now shoot it to me straight. What the hell do I need to do? Okay, this is what I would do if I was in your position, if I was somebody who's sedentary, that's just trying to get back into the game, that's trying to build momentum and start strength training. What I would do is I would do a 20-minute circuit 2 times a week for a month, just to get into the routine of, okay, I show up for myself, I do what I need to do, and I'm getting benefit by doing these 20-minute workouts. Then if you can do that for a straight month, and let's make it even more flexible. Let's just say you get 8 sessions in a month. So 1 week, you get busy, you can only do 1, fine. Get 3 the next time, and let's get 8 on the month. Okay, if you're able to do that, then go up. Okay, go up to 40-minute workouts if you have the time to, and do that 2 to 4 times a week. Or let's say you only have 20 minutes. That's totally cool. Do those 20-minute circuits, but instead of only 2 times, now go to 3 or 4 times a week, and then keep things on the off days like a step goal, like cardio and all that good stuff. And then when it comes to what type of workout to do for that 20 minutes or for that 40 minutes, okay, if it's 20 minutes, do push, pull, legs, and abs. And when I say legs, you could pick the hinge or the squat and do that, because then you'll be able to get more volume in, and you could go back and forth. Like, I like doing a day A and a day B, where it's like you do the same push, pull, and core. You could even change it up if you want to, but ideally you keep that the same, but you change the legs. So on day A, you do something squatting. Day B, you do something hinging. Real simple way to do it. Then when you get into the 40-minute workouts, do something with push, pull, squat, hinge, core, and mobility. And the way I would break that up, like we just talked about supersetting the non-competing exercises, what I would do is something pulling and hinging, because now you're working everything in the back of your body. Okay. Or if you want to make it even better and not have any competing variables, I guess I would do like anterior upper, posterior lower. And now I know I'm starting to get into the weeds a little bit, but stick with me. Okay, so something like doing a chest press and then do something like a deadlift or a RDL, doing those back and forth, and then flip it. So now we're going to go the back of your upper body and the front of your lower body. So something like a squat with a row, and then do that back and forth 3-4 sets. And then last but not least, do core and mobility. So do some sort of an ab exercise, whether that's carries, whether that's sit-ups or crunches or twists or anything like that. And then superset that with some sort of stretching, whether it's laying down and doing some sort of a T-spine rotation or a figure 4 pigeon pose, anything you see in yoga, okay, any of that stuff, and then bounce between those two. And that should make for a really, really good routine. And like I said, 3 to 4 sets is all you really need if you're pushing the weights heavy enough. And that's what I'm going to get into last, which is the main focus being progressive overload. When it comes to strength training, the main focus, number one, should be progressive overload. And what does that mean? Progressive overload is doing more, giving your body more of a demand, or seeing the change in what you're doing. So, for example, doing another repetition because your body allows you to. Now, when it comes to the repetitions, a lot of times you'll see programs where they'll say, okay, do 10 reps, and then you do 10 and then you chill. And then time goes on and you're like, I don't feel any difference. Like nothing's changing. That's because we're not reaching that point of mechanical tension, which is the difference between the first and the last repetition. So say you're watching on YouTube right now and you see me doing the really bad impersonation of an incline press. Okay, let's say you're doing an incline press and the first reps look like this. It's like they all look about the same. And then on those last couple reps, so we're aiming for 10. Let's say you get to 7 and you're like, ooh, okay, this is starting to feel heavy. I'm slowing down a little bit. And then you get to 8 and it's a little bit slower. Then you get to 9, it's really slow. And then 10's like that last one that's like, this may or may not go up. That's how we know we've hit mechanical tension. And if you can get to that place where you're right there, or maybe a rep shy of that, that's how you know it's what we call an effective set. So if you're able to do those repetitions, and then next time you come in, you're not hitting that hard point where it's at 7. Now it's not feeling heavy until you get to like 9. And now you can go for 10, 11, maybe 12 repetitions. That's progressive overload because now you're getting more repetitions. And it's also feeling easier when you got to the point you were at last week or the month prior. Another way you could do progressive overload is sets. So say you're starting up and you feel like, okay, I do 1 or 2 sets in these first couple of weeks and I feel spent. And then you come in next week and you're like, okay, I get to that end of my second set, but I'm feeling pretty good. I might be able to throw another one in. That's progressive overload by doing that next one. Or let's say time. Another way you could do it is time. So if you're doing a plank, simple example, and you can only get to 10 seconds, totally cool. You gave it your best. You pushed it as hard as you could. Next time you come in, now you can go for 15 seconds or 20 seconds because your body is getting more efficient. It's getting stronger. That's how we know that you are progressively overloading. Okay. And another good one, like I mentioned prior, is just feeling better doing the same amount of work. Say you do the exact same workout, but you feel really good compared to feeling like you were dead last time. That's like you're going to your group class and day one, you felt like absolute death, but now in your group class, you're like one of the top people that are kind of the veterans. And that's progressive overload where you feel like, okay, I do this and it's no big deal and I feel good. That's progressive overload. And if you can do that while hitting that mechanical tension point on the strength training exercises, you will see a world of difference in your body, in your energy, and just how you feel overall. It's going to be like a night and day difference if you follow this simple formula. Well, I say simple because it sounded simple. I hope it came off simple. So just a couple of closing notes before we wrap this up. This might be an acquired taste because a lot of people do get into strength training and they're like, okay, I hear all the benefits. My doctor said I got to do this. My like friend, cousin who's really fit says it's the way to go, but you just don't like it. It's totally cool. There are people that happens to where it's like, it's an acquired taste. You got to keep showing up. You got to keep putting in the work. And then you might not fall in love with doing it, but you'll fall in love with the result. And when you chase that really good result, it becomes easier. And then you might even find that it does become enjoyable because you know that you're getting closer and closer to your goal. I know I already mentioned Arnold Schwarzenegger, but the guy's just chock full of really good examples. The guy, when he was at the top of his game, winning Olympias every single year, a reporter comes up to him and he's like, you're the only guy I see smiling here. Like everybody else looks like they want to punch a hole in the wall, but you're smiling ear to ear. Why are you so happy? And he's like, because I know every single repetition that I do is going to get me closer to my goal. Every single repetition is getting me closer to that trophy. And that's a really, really good way to look at it, where it's like, okay, just know the end result that you're chasing, not how many reps, how hard this is going to be, or, oh, I got to do this. Think about the end goal. Think about what you're chasing, and that'll help keep you on track. And right now, if you haven't done anything, focus on that first step that I told you. Just get in the door. Just be in the gym, experience it. Or if you're working out from home, set up your workout station, set up where you want to be, put the dumbbells out, go through a warm up, just get started. Just show up for yourself. And that's step number one. And when you're doing this, don't expect perfection. You are not going to be perfect day one. It's kind of like school. If you show up day one and think, okay, I'm going to get my college degree, even though I'm in kindergarten, that's not happening. Okay, that's just not how life works. You're not going to show up to the gym. You're not going to show up for your first workout and be like, I'm going to have pristine form. I'm going to eat perfectly once I'm done with this. That's not how this works. So go at it with the scope of, I just want to get better every time that I go in there. And that will be achievable over and over and over again. And my final thing, promise, keep in mind, people have gotten in incredible shape with really dumb workouts, with really stupidly constructed workouts because they just showed up and worked hard. So you will get results even if you don't do everything perfectly to a T. If you just show up and put in that hard work and talk, and how we talked about the mechanical tension side of things, where you're pushing to that point where it's slowing down and you feel like you're giving a good effort, you will see your body change. Okay. There's the best ways to do it. There's better ways to do it, and you'll get there. But right now, just put in the hard work and you will see a difference, and you can touch it up as you go. I promise you will be in such a better place if you just focus on that stuff. Now, if you heard all of this and you're like, okay, this is awesome, I want to do this, I want to get started with these 20-minute workouts because that's probably the most doable for me, check out the Toned in 20 workouts that are down in the comment, or not the comments, the show notes or the description, wherever you're watching or listening. Definitely go grab those and give them a try. And they're going to follow the principles I talked about, where it's like we're not doing competing stuff back to back, and it's going to flow a lot nicer, and you're going to get better results from doing those style of workouts. You could do them with bands, with body weight or dumbbells, whatever you got at home. Or if you have nothing at home, you could do body weight. And my only ask is that if you're not following the show already, please be sure to follow it so you don't miss an episode and you can keep getting awesome information. And if you know somebody who wants to get into strength training and isn't really sure what to do, and they're trying to do all the research on their own, go ahead and send this their way. Save them some time, get them the right information, and they will be happier for it. And if somebody already did that for you and you're listening right now, go ahead and pay it forward and keep the cycle alive. Just keep it going, keep getting people good information, because we want to live our best lives and we want to do it ASAP. So that's the last thing I'll say on that. Thank you guys for tuning in all the way through. I will see you next time. But until then, go kick some ass. See you later.